When I think about how technology has changed assessment for me, I've only been teaching for 7 years. So um, when I first started, I went, "This should be pretty easy because there hasn't been much change at all." But the more I thought about it, the more wrong I was. In my first year of teaching, I used this LMS right here called RenWeb. And RenWeb is basically a glorified online gradebook. It's a great place to store student information and things like that. But in terms of assessments and in terms of doing assignments and doing any kind of formative assessment, I was dealing with stacks of paper this thick, and coming home and trying to grade those every day and trying to differentiate and doing things like that was kind of a chore, if I can be honest. On the other hand, when I think of just a few years later, here I am. This is what I use to manage my entire classroom now. I assign out I can sign up multiple due dates on multiple assignments. I can level assignments within the assignment. So when I think about what assessment looks like, especially in terms of formative, more of those quick check-in assignments, I'm dealing with a much more manageable, much easier to organize, much easier to differentiate. Technology has really streamlined that for me, especially in a one-to-one school. My stack of papers I bring home is now about this big, maybe this big at the most. Maybe once a week I'll have some hard papers to grade, but for the most part, I'm dealing with this checklist right over here, which is just grading the things that were turned in today. So I think in terms of the past till now, my back doesn't hurt as much. That's a huge thing for me. I'm dealing with much less paperwork. I feel like having a digital version of a lot of these things keeps the kids better organized. It allows me to be more flexible in what I allow them to do. I don't have to think about trying to carry home 55 dioramas for my multiple social studies classes or anything like that. Um, I can think more about opening up what they can do. And if I have a couple dioramas and a couple videos and some explain everything assignments and different things like that, I'm dealing with a much different situation and I'm being more authentic to who the kids really are. What will assessment look like in the future? You know what? I hope it looks something similar to this. I don't know, but I think right now where we're at, we've really hit a an explosion. I don't think we're going to change too much if I can look into my own crystal ball, and I certainly hope we don't because this is something that I've been very successful with in terms of managing assessment, in terms of finding things that work for my students, being able to differentiate test questions for kids without even them knowing that I'm doing a B version or a C version of a particular test. Um, so in 10 years from now, I hope that whatever we're doing is even faster and more powerful than it is now. And I hope that we continue that trend um, towards more authentic learning. And that's what I want it to look like in the future, if you ask me. Now, in terms of what my new learning has given me and the tools that I'm going to take from this class, the concept of a feedback loop has been my absolute favorite thing to implement this year. It's something I've always wanted to do, and having some reference and having some language to put to it has been essential for me in this class. And my students are thriving this year in the idea of constantly improving and constantly looking for feedback, constantly looking about if they turn something in 5 days early, that's okay. If they turned it in three more times after that, after receiving some feedback, I think that's really a key thing for the future of what we want our kids to do. we, especially my school mandates us using a growth mindset language. So constantly, the kids constantly wanting to improve and constantly wanting to grow, as opposed to I turned this in and it wasn't right, so I failed. They're looking at things in terms of how do I grow from this? How can I get better? And they're constantly looking at that instead of looking at, worrying about what I'm going to say. They crave my feedback now because they want to be better and they want to continue to improve. And I've had kids do almost 3 times as much work for me on certain assignments. I had one girl who she was supposed to study ancient Colorado tribes and had so much fun with tinkering with her assignment and continuing to work with just the Ute Indians that she ended up studying another group called the Anasazis on her own and turned that in and is actually able to present that to the rest of the class, and everyone benefit from it. Um, and not that I couldn't get a student who maybe was an overachiever to do that in the past, but when you are constantly building students towards that idea of getting better and always improving and growing, it becomes a real intrinsic motivator for them, in my opinion, and especially with how well things are going this year with implementing a feedback loop. Um, Aside from parents adjusting to it and really being curious about it, it's been really great to. Um, I feel like it's taken me to a different level of teaching and something that I am going to enjoy doing for years to come.